Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Northern Forge. Today I want to show you how to forge a plant hanger. Now I call it a plant hanger, but really this can be used to hang just about anything. In fact, the one I'm making here today is actually a prototype design for a lantern holder that somebody asked me to make for them. So without further ado, let's jump right in. For this project, I'm going to be using 1/4 inch by 1 inch flat bar. I've got a piece here about 14 inches long. I also have a center punch, a 1/4 inch round punch, my hammer and tongs, and I'm going to be using a hardy hole bending fork that I'll get out a little bit later. For the first step here, I'm going to use the center punch to make 4 marks on the bar. The first 2 marks are going to be where I'm going to punch the holes for mounting, and the next 2 marks are just to indicate where I want to make my bends so that I can see those marks once it's hot. Now on the first heat, I want to start forging a taper on the end of the bar that has only 1 mark on it. I forged the taper almost all the way back to the mark. For this particular piece, it's about 1.5 inches, and this is going to form the hook end of the hanger. And this project requires 2 sharp 90-degree bends, so I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make those. The first way to make that bend is to place the center of the bend over the edge of the anvil, and I'm going to start hammering down on the section sticking off the anvil to get that loose 90-degree bend. Then I forge down on the section that's still on top of the anvil, followed by switching back and forth. That's going to create that nice 90-degree turn. With the first bend done, I get the bending forks into place. I want to isolate the heat to just the tapered section on the end, so I'm going to use the snow to actually cool everything down. If you don't have snow on the ground, just use water. Bending the hook around did mess up my 90 a little bit, so this time I'm going to isolate the heat by cooling down the hook. Then I can use the hammer on that without messing up the hook bend. The next step is to go ahead and punch the holes that will be used for mounting this. You guys have seen this before in my other videos, especially my tong making videos, so I don't want to talk too much about the punching itself, but I will mention that on this project, the order of operations is particularly important. These holes need to be punched before I make the second bend. Otherwise, the project won't lay flat on the anvil. It's going to be really difficult to punch these holes if you do the bend first. Now, I always try and make sure that I show you guys the entire process when I'm making something, and sometimes that includes when I make a mistake. You can see here in a second that the plug on this lower hole does not come out cleanly like it's supposed to. This is exactly what happens when your holes don't line up perfectly, going from one side to the other. Since I was only off by a tiny bit on this one, all I have to do is flip the piece over one more time after the steel has cooled down, and then when I drive in the punch, the plug will actually shear off the last little bit of steel holding it, and it'll fall right out. It's not a big deal, but it was a mistake that I made, and I just And here's the second method I mentioned to make that clean 90. If you have a vise, I clamp the piece in the vise with my mark just above the top of the jaws, then use the tongs to start the bend, followed by the hammer just to forge it down onto the top of those jaws and make that nice 90-degree bend. I take a heat here to flatten out the horizontal part of the hanger, and while doing that I noticed that my bend wasn't quite straight, so after I'm done here I'm going to take it back over to the vise and I'll hammer on it sideways to straighten that out. And now that it's straightened out, this hanger is all finished up. Thanks for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to see more, and leave a comment with what you'd like to see me make next.